What would happen if, for some reason, we ignore somebody unlocked 100% of the cerebral capacity?
100%?
Imagine something that can turn tiny flashes of light and sounds into the entire vibrant world you experience. Something that can paint dreams, take you through time, and even create ideas beyond reality. That something is the brain, a structure so amazing that scientists say we know more about the surface of Mars than we do about it. Have you ever wondered what makes the difference between a genius and an ordinary person? Can someone possess extraordinary abilities based on their brain power? That's what we'll try to find out in today's video. The true power of the brain. Let's start in Seattle, Washington, USA. Researchers at the University of Washington's Institute for Learning and Brain Sciences have announced an incredible discovery. Any newborn baby has the ability to learn any language in the world. This proves that we, from the very first moments of life, are gifted with a superhuman capacity. Research shows that a baby's brain is like a super sponge, able to absorb all the information from its surroundings. There are about 800 common communication sounds in the world, but most adults only use about 40 of them. Surprisingly, newborn babies can distinguish all 800 of those sounds. When babies babble, they're not just making random, meaningless noises. Instead, they're trying to recreate the sounds they hear little by little until they succeed. Imagine a baby's brain. It's much larger compared to an adult's body, weighing about 370 to 390 grams, which makes up 12 to 13% of its body weight. In contrast, an adult's brain only accounts for about 2.3 to 2.8%. Such a complex and amazing structure. But have you ever wondered, what do we really understand about our own brains? The harsh answer is definitely not much. There are two biggest and most difficult mysteries in this world. The first is the question of the birth of the universe, the beginning of life. And the second is when you look in the mirror and suddenly realize you're conscious. You don't know why you're conscious, where it comes from, how it works, whether it will ever disappear, and then you realize the brain is the most complex object in the universe we know of to date. What's happening in the brain every second, every minute that passes? But the brain doesn't just exist, it's constantly in motion. Every breath, every memory, every sleep leaves its mark on it. To better understand how the brain works its magic, let's go back in time nearly 200 years to an event that neuroscience still cites as the clearest proof of the brain's power and mystery. It's the story of a man who lost more than half his brain and miraculously survived. In 1848, this man was leading his team of workers building a new railway outside Cavendish, Vermont. His job was to pack explosives into drill holes, then use an iron rod to push it down and detonate it to break the rock, clearing the way for new rail lines. On September 13, 1848, Phineas Gage was working as usual, but while talking to another worker, he accidentally slammed the iron rod in his hand hard against the rock. Sparks flew, igniting the explosives in the drill hole and causing it to explode. The iron rod flew out of position, straight through Gage's left cheek, into his mouth, through his brain, and out the top of his head. If you'd witnessed the scene then, you wouldn't believe Gage could survive. The wound was truly horrifying. However, after a few minutes, a miracle happened. Gage began to regain consciousness and could speak. He was quickly taken to a place to rest while waiting for the doctor. 30 minutes after the accident, Dr. Edward Williams finally arrived, and he couldn't believe what was happening before his eyes. Gage was sitting upright on a chair outside a hotel, talking to people around him with the 1 meter long, 3 centimeter diameter, 6 kilogram iron rod covered in blood and brain matter stuck in his head. It went through his skull, piercing his left cerebral hemisphere, destroying a significant part of his brain and pushing his eyeball out of its socket. Everyone thought he would die instantly with such a terrible wound. But the truth was quite the opposite. Gage was calm and conscious enough to talk as if nothing had happened. His brain was severely damaged after being pierced by the rod, yet he survived. Gage lived for another 12 years after the accident. With extraordinary effort, he led a relatively normal life despite the severe brain damage. But how? How could his brain compensate and maintain function with such a large portion damaged? That's a huge question we need to find an answer to if we want to understand more about the brain's wonders and its capabilities. The brain is a learning machine, automatically replaying what it's exposed to. So the present you is always different from the you of a few seconds ago because you've heard, felt, or learned something new. This also means we can never fully discover everything about the brain, as it's constantly changing over time. We know it's too complex to be fully explored, but we can learn more by studying the brains of exceptional individuals, those who excel beyond us, or more precisely, those who are extraordinary. What makes an individual stand out in intellect, emotion, or wisdom? What makes them called a genius? Does their brain reveal some secret, a hidden secret within? The University of California, Davis, June 2018, Tanishq Abraham received his diploma in his proud graduation gown. But unlike other students, Abraham earned his degree at just 15 years old. When Tanishq was 4, people recognized his exceptional potential. They conducted an IQ test to better understand this ability. Amazingly, at just 14, he answered 99.99% of the test questions correctly and became the youngest member of Mensa, the association of people with the highest IQs in the world. There's no other word but genius to describe Tanishq's intellect. What creates this superhuman intelligence compared to other ordinary people? Does Abraham's brain have something special? Of course, we can't study Tanishq's brain as it seriously violates scientific ethics and individual rights. However, we discover that genius isn't something inherited like eye color, height, or other physical traits, as Abraham's parents are both completely ordinary. Many geniuses in the world come from ordinary families, with parents who don't have outstanding IQs. So we don't know exactly why a genius is born. There's something special about the brain development of these geniuses. It's not innate, not inherited from previous generations, but definitely influenced by something. If we can discover this, the potential to help more people become geniuses, to tap into the brain's capabilities more powerfully, is enormous. Is the potential for genius within each of us somewhere deep in everyone's brain? So the question now is how to unlock this inherent genius potential, activate it whenever we want. Imagine if that happened. What a huge breakthrough we would have in human development. One day, each person enters a room where there are choices to become an Einstein, Mozart, or Picasso as they wish. It sounds crazy, but also very interesting. Of course, we'll have to make trade-offs to become a genius, and we don't know how much we'll have to give up to have the intellect of a scholar in a few minutes. I don't wish any of us to have a pool accident to activate our hidden genius. Moreover, what if the genius bestowed by the brain isn't used by a scientist or artist, but is controlled by a criminal, worse, a serial killer? Infamous criminals with genius IQs, Ted Bundy. Florida State Prison, January 21st, 1989. A few days before the execution of notorious serial killer Ted Bundy, he confessed to taking the lives of at least 30 people before being here, in this prison. The impending execution was the end of a horrific crime spree that spanned over 10 decades. Without much knowledge, we can immediately recognize him as the perfect example of a psychopath, cruel, aggressive, aloof. Brutality or ugliness were things Ted Bundy lacked. Instead, he had a strangely handsome and charming appearance. He knew how to win people over, even being very kind. In general, Bundy was the ideal image you think of as an ordinary person. Only his psyche was far from normal, a bloodthirsty predator deep within him. How did a polite and decent young man like Ted Bundy become a cold-blooded psychopath and serial killer? Did the influences during his upbringing change Ted's nature, or was he born cruel? There has been much recent research in psychology and criminal behavior focusing on the brains of psychopaths. As a result, we recognize many commonalities among the defects in their brains. This man is Adrian Raine, a psychology professor at the University of Southern California. To observe the brains of murderers, he used positron emission tomography, or PET for short. This method allows him to understand how brain function works. Combined with MRI technology, which helps him study brain structure, Raine carefully compared the function and structure of the brains of 41 murderers and 41 parolees. He found lower activity in the prefrontal cortex, the area above the eyes and behind the forehead of the murderers, compared to the activity of normal parolees. These parts of the brain are responsible for empathy and understanding, conscience, or the humanity in the moral codes we often talk about. The prefrontal cortex acts as a restraint in the human brain, curbing the wildness, the animal part in each individual. And if these individuals have poor prefrontal brain function, they can't control and regulate their emotions. This again raises a larger ethical issue for humanity. Should we continue to research and find ways to organize and influence to improve the brains of psychopaths into normal people? Or what if we discover a newborn baby with a defective brain like a serial killer? How should we raise it? Returning to Ted Bundy's case, brain defects combined with an extremely unhealthy environment created a true monster. Ted was born without knowing who his real father was. Ted Bundy's birth certificate supposedly acknowledged paternity by a former Air Force salesman named Lloyd Marshall. However, many reports claim that the father's name on Bundy's official documents was listed as unknown. For the first 3 years of his life, Bundy lived in a village in Philadelphia with his maternal grandparents, Samuel Cowell and Eleanor Cowell, who raised him as their own son. To avoid social stigma, Bundy lied about being an illegitimate child. But in 1987, Bundy revealed a truth. He described to his lawyers that Samuel Cowell was a domineering, conservative, bigoted dictator prejudiced against people of color, Italians, Catholics, and Jews, beating his wife and dog, even hanging the neighbors' cats by their tails. It seems the seeds of violence were sown in Bundy's mind early on. This caused a perceptual distortion that couldn't be corrected later. This partly proves that psychopathic killers aren't born from brain defects, but mostly from external environmental influences. So, if a child has some issues in the prefrontal cortex, we can rest assured if they're well cared for and educated. Are the impacts of the environment enough to explain such cold-bloodedness? Is there something driving them to commit those gruesome acts of slaughter that hasn't been found yet? Or something more elusive within the human brain, for example? Perhaps the answer doesn't lie in the physical components of the brain we've just discussed, but in an intangible, invisible realm. Boston, Massachusetts, March 2018. Nectome, a biotech startup, announced a controversial project, the plan to upload data from the human brain onto computers. They're trying to preserve the brain and mind. There's a view that if we can't fight aging, there's no point in keeping our old, damaged bodies. Instead, let's find a way to upload the entire brain, including all thoughts, feelings, and memories, onto a computer. Then, create a virtual paradise, like in the TV show Black Mirror, and put that simulated brain into an avatar body. Uploading the brain to a computer involves a field called whole brain emulation, or WBE. There's already a lot of technology supporting this process. It involves a tripod in 3 areas: scanning and reconstructing brain images, building computer processing power and memory, simulating virtual environments and virtual reality. Let's start with scanning the brain, because researchers will have to start there. Among scanning technologies, there's a bottleneck we need to solve to unlock WBE technology. That's the connectomy. The connectomy is a complete map of the brain, including all neurons and the complex connections between them. Currently, scientists have only established the connectomy map of one animal species, the roundworm. The roundworm's brain has only about 302 neurons. Compare that to the number of neurons in the human brain, which is 86 billion. Not to mention that each neuron in our brain has about 10,000 connections from other neurons. The most advanced brain scanning technologies today, like fMRI or MEG, simply aren't powerful enough to map the brain. There are other methods that would allow us to scan the brain in more detail, but they tend to damage or destroy the brain. For the brains of living people, the most promising scanning technology being researched is the use of electrodes with thousands of recording points on them. Currently, this technology is extremely invasive to the human body, meaning you have to undergo a lot of surgery. The electrodes, once precisely placed inside the brain, can show us thousands of neurons at once. But the distance from thousands to 86 billion neurons is vast. The bottleneck of the connectomy still needs to be solved. Regardless of the brain scanning technology, after converting all our memories and thoughts into data, scientists estimate it could reach zettabytes, or 10 to the power of 21 bytes of data, which needs to be organized and processed. For comparison, 1 zettabyte equals 1,000 billion gigabytes, and our brain scanning technologies today can only process the data of individual neurons in real time. Scientists are slowly sorting through terabytes of data manually. So, to be able to read the entire connectomy, we'll need advanced machine learning and data mining technologies. Computer processing power has also grown exponentially over the past century. Similarly, computer memory. If things continue like this, we'll soon reach the necessary processing requirements. But when you upload your brain to a computer, is it still you? At the moment you create a copy of your brain, there are two brains existing in parallel. When your real brain dies and your body is cremated, what confirms that the mind you just put on the computer is you, or just another version of you starting to exist? Unlocking the potential of the brain can propel humans forward millions of years of evolution, but it also opens up many truly frightening consequences. Do you think our brains are being held back? And are you willing to unlock the hidden potential within to advance to a new society, a higher level of life? If you've watched this entire video, I believe your brain is truly powerful. Our video today ends here. See you in the next video on the journey of discovering new secrets. Thanks for watching the whole video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content.